What happened in the secret meeting between Shedeur Sanders and NFL executives changed the NFL landscape forever. You've heard the rumors, but we have the information of the strategic pivot that silenced every critic in the room. Watch how one closed-door session transformed Shedeur from a legacy narrative into the league's most feared tactical nightmare. They thought they were inviting a media circus into that suite, but what they walked into was a cold, calculated coup. By the time the lights came back on, the power dynamic of the entire NFL draft had been completely rewritten. It was late in Indianapolis, long after the primary workouts at Lucas Oil Stadium had wrapped up and the national media had packed away their cameras. While commentators on sports networks were debating whether Shedeur Sanders was merely a hyper-hyped product of his father's celebrity machine, a far more dangerous conversation was unfolding on the top floor of a private hotel suite downtown. Inside that room sat 4 general managers, 3 head coaches, and 2 elite offensive coordinators, alongside Shedeur's closest inner circle. There were no cameras allowed, no publicists taking notes, and no friendly chatter. The air was thick with the distinct tension of high-stakes corporate negotiation, where legacy perception met hard, unforgiving reality. The room had initially come together under a blanket of deep skepticism. Front offices were terrified of the surrounding circus, the flash, the luxury watches, the endless social media noise, and many in the building privately believed that Shedeur's college production was inflated by a fast-paced system designed to pad numbers rather than prepare a passer for real Sunday football. But the moment the door locked, the grandstanding ended. The television screens flickered to life, displaying a custom, raw statistical breakdown that bypassed every single highlight reel circulating on the internet. It was an unfiltered look at third down efficiency against disguise coverages, throwaway rates under instant pressure, and ball placement on intermediate boundary routes. As the data points flashed across the screen, the initial cynicism in the room began to evaporate. The statistical pack demonstrated that under absolute panic conditions, when his offensive line completely collapsed, Shedeur's metric accuracy actually went up, not down. The media had sold him as a showman, but the numbers laid bare a relentless, robotic performer who thrived in chaotic environments. Then came the centerpiece of the entire night, a silent 15-minute film study session. Shedeur didn't sit in the back and let an agent talk for him. He stood right at the front of the screen, clicker in hand, speaking with the clinical precision of a 10-year veteran. He began breaking down defensive rotations before the snap, calling out safety blitz disguises and pointing out subtle 2-inch shifts in linebacker alignment that revealed coverage shells before the ball was ever snapped. The room went dead quiet. The executives who had entered the suite expecting to manage an ego found themselves taking notes on a masterclass in modern pre-snap diagnosis. The shift was immediate and terrifying for those evaluators. In under an hour, the conversation transformed from whether Shedeur Sanders was worth the media headache to a terrifying realization that he was the most likely to the league in years. The film session in that suite did more than just surprise the executives in attendance. It systematically dismantled the foundational bias that had followed Shedeur Sanders since high school. For years, the dominant narrative dictated that Shedeur was an extension of his father's brand, a high-profile creation built on social media dominance, customized cleats, and tailored spotlight moments. Skeptics assumed that his numbers at Colorado were the byproduct of an artificially fast system, custom-built to manufacture stats while shielding him from the complex realities of professional football. But as the scouts and general managers sat in that dimly lit room staring at the advanced analytics displayed on the wall, the legacy project label crumbled into irrelevance. The data presented that night focused heavily on one specific metric that front offices evaluate above almost everything else: raw post-snap processing speed. Across the entire 2026 rookie quarterback class, Shedeur recorded the fastest mental processing index in high-stress, blitz-heavy scenarios. When opposing defenses brought extra pass rushers, his time to decision was under 2 seconds, not because he rushed throws out of panic, but because he was diagnosing line movement and secondary rotations before his hands even gripped the laces. While media pundits spent months debating whether his arm strength was or merely above average, the underlying metrics revealed a quarterback who operated with cognitive speed that outstripped every one of his peers. He was processing field information not like a rookie adjusting to the speed of the method, but like an experienced starter who had already seen every defensive trigger. That revelation forced an immediate recalibration in how evaluators graded him. For the first time, scouts completely abandoned the lazy comparisons to his father, Shedeur Sanders. Evaluating Shedeur through the lens of prime time, Shedeur was a hyper-athletic marvel who dominated through raw, explosive instinct, whereas Shedeur was a methodical, pocket passer technician whose greatest asset was his surgical mental discipline. In their scouting high-level executives stopped comparing two college high-functions, grading his pocket movement against veterans known for elite spatial awareness and poise under pressure. They noted how he stood tall in crumbling pockets, stepping into violent hits to deliver passes with touch, displaying rare physical toughness, cutting social media highlight reels. The turning point of the act came when a high-ranking AFC executive, a veteran team builder known for his cynical view of modern college quarterbacks, leaned back in his chair and made a blunt confession. He admitted that his front office had spent the entire draft cycle misjudging Shedeur because they had allowed the external noise to blind them to the player's day-to-day reality. The executive confessed that the flashy prime branding, the diamond-encrusted watches, and the endless commercial production were actually masking the most obsessive in recent college football history. Behind the glitz was a quarterback who spent 4 to 5 hours a day in solo film study, who demanded perfection from his offensive line, and who treated every rep in practice with the intensity of a championship game. The brand was what the public saw, but the relentless, uncompromising obsession with mastery was what lived underneath. This shift in perception changed everything for the teams holding high draft capital. Front offices realized that if they drafted Shedeur,
Sam, pleasure to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. Hi.
distraction or a fire
Hi, guys.
they were getting a cold,
How you doing, boss?
highly cerebral distributor who possessed the mental architecture required to elevate an entire franchise from day one. The narrative of the legacy pick was dead, replaced by the far more terrifying truth that Shedeur Sanders was a self-made quarterback who had used the media circus as a smokescreen while quietly building the most refined game in his draft class. Understanding the mental shifts was only half the battle. The executives in that room needed visual, undeniable evidence that Shedeur Sanders could execute a pro-style offense at the physical level. They needed to see that his mechanics could adapt to the grueling demands of an NFL pocket. The third phase of that secret session transitioned from abstract statistical models to a granular pitch-by-pitch breakdown of a quiet, behind closed doors mechanical evolution.
I thought I was well dressed. Let me tell you something.
Taking total secrecy over the preceding months. In college, Shedeur relied heavily on elite upper body touch and natural rotational torque, which often allowed him to make off-platform throws.
John Tatum, Janusco Sports, Shedeur. It seemed like only yesterday we were together.
About his deep ball velocity, his tendency to take deep 7-step drops out of shotgun to buy time, and a slightly elongated release that could give elite professional edge rushers a fraction of a second to strip the ball.
Yeah,
His team knew that to
seriously, yeah. Right, y'all get you in 18. All right.
On screen, his trainers brought up side-by-side high-speed camera footage, comparing his college dropbacks to his refined off-season mechanical setup. The adjustments were precise, subtle, and fundamentally transformative. First,
Keep an eye out.
in the new footage, Shedeur narrowed his stance by nearly 3 inches, anchoring his back foot directly under his back hip. This subtle adjustment eliminated the slight hitch at the top of his drop, allowing his hips to snap through instantly.
Get in here.
Second, he shortened his elbow path to decrease his release time from 0.42 seconds down to a rapid 0.34 seconds. The result was immediate. Passes to the far boundary, throws that critics claimed lacked true NFL on the ball. The film then shifted to high-stakes tape drills, specifically designed to test his field manipulation, a trait that separates functional starting quarterbacks from true elite franchise cornerbacks. Tomorrow. Full field reads against complex, multi-tiered defensive schemes. The camera zoomed in on his eyes and head posture, rather than locking onto his primary target post-snap. Shedeur demonstrated a masterclass.
Okay, I heard they brought your money thing, but it wasn't real money.
With a subtle half-second stare, opening up single coverage lanes along the sideline before driving the ball into tight windows without ever breaking stride. He wasn't just throwing to spots on a
What is that?
No, it was
defenders.
We accept all that.
High discipline. When a simulated zone blitz dropped an edge rusher into his primary hot route, Shedeur didn't panic or drop his eyes to look at the rush. He calmly shifted his weight in the pocket, slid 2 steps to his left to reset his position, and ripped a second.
I'm going to his house.
We bring the draft up.
The room watched as he repeatedly neutralized pressure, not with his legs, but with elite pocket navigation and spatial awareness. What made this mechanical overhaul so devastating to the executives in attendance was its calculated alignment with the modern NFL landscape. This wasn't a generic off-season workout routine designed to impress media cameras at a standard pro day. Every single drill, every footwork tweak, and every route concept featured on that tape was tailored to address the exact offensive frameworks and skill gaps franchises wanted top draft. This camp had done a deep dive into the playbook demands of those specific front offices, building a custom training regimen that directly mirrored their passing concepts. By the end of the mechanical demonstration, the narrative had flipped. The scouts who had initially questioned whether Shedeur could transition out of a spread-look college system were staring at a quarterback whose footwork, release speed, and field vision were already operating at a pro-style standard. He had taken his raw talent, stripped away every habit, dicing up Sunday coverages. The surgical pivot was complete, leaving no doubt that Shedeur Sanders possessed both the cerebral processing power and the mechanical tools to operate at the highest level of football.
Have you got a lot of swag?
Decisive hotel suite was purely political. Shedeur Sanders and his inner circle weren't just presenting a refined quarterback, they were executing a high-stakes corporate power play designed to reshape top prospects are routinely expected to be passive subjects in the draft process, waiting for a front office to select them, assign them a system, and dictate their developmental timeline. That night, Shedeur's team
What's going on? Listen, I know you got to be a catcher.
forced the league into total alignment with his specific operational style. They called it the takeover blueprint. Laid out before the assembled executives was a detailed operational manual outlining the precise environment.
I got to double up.
It didn't focus
How you
on
doing,
personal
coach?
luxury.
Has it been right? Ain't gonna...
It centered on structural efficiency. The document detailed specific offensive line protection schemes that best matched his processing speed, ideal receiving personnel profiles, and even structural preferences for weekly game plan installations. His camp presented an uncompromising argument. Shedeur was not a plug-and-play asset to be dropped into a dysfunctional system. He was a high-precision engine, and the franchise that selected him needed to build the rest of the car to match his specifications. The core of this blueprint rested on a blunt rejection of traditional NFL development timelines. For decades, standard league dogma dictated that young quarterbacks should enter a franchise quietly, sit behind a bridge veteran, and spend a year learning the playbook from the sidelines while front office personnel managed their transition. Shedeur's camp dismantled that traditional approach right there in the room. They presented advanced metric projections showing that sitting him would actively stall his greatest competitive advantage, his real-time high-rep mental processing. They made it explicitly clear that Shedeur expected immediate offensive control upon drafting, backed by full access to weekly game plan input and audio-visual coaching tools typically reserved for multi-year veterans. For the old guard executives in attendance, this level of assertiveness was almost unprecedented for an unproven draft prospect. In any other era, such demands might have been dismissed as arrogance or entitlement. But Shedeur's camp backed every assertion with staggering commercial and performance data that made the proposition impossible to ignore. They displayed multi-year financial models forecasting the immediate revenue impact of drafting Shedeur, ranging from ticket sales surges and primetime viewership spikes to massive international sponsorship opportunities that followed his brand. More importantly, they paired those economic projections with advanced win probability models, demonstrating that giving Shedeur immediate control of an offense drastically increased a team's chances of reaching playoff contention within a 2-year window compared to standard rookie transition timelines. The numbers proved that his mental readiness yielded a far higher floor and a significantly faster trajectory to elite production than traditional scouting methods accounted for. The room was forced into submission not by loud declarations, but by the overwhelming weight of evidence. The executives realized that Shedeur's camp wasn't asking for special treatment out of ego. They were offering a pre-packaged, fully engineered solution for a struggling franchise desperate for modern direction. By refusing to play the traditional draft game of passive submissiveness, Shedeur forced the league's top decision-makers to evaluate him as an equal partner in building a winning program. The power play worked. The room went from evaluating a rookie quarterback to negotiating the terms of a franchise takeover. The immediate ripple effects of that high-stakes summit sent shockwaves directly through the league. When the high-stakes gamble played out on the field, the league's quarterback hierarchy felt the tremor almost overnight. Front offices that had hesitated or relied on traditional scouting frameworks were left scrambling to adjust as Shedeur Sanders stepped into the league and instantly altered the competitive landscape. The calculated power play from that private suite ceased to be a theoretical blueprint. It became an active, operational reality. Across the league, defensive coordinators were forced to completely rewrite their game plans when facing him. The standard blitz packages and disguise coverages that routinely flustered young quarterbacks were shredded by his surgical pre-snap diagnosis and lightning-fast processing speed. Teams that spent decades relying on physical traits over mental architecture watched in real time as Shedeur's poise and processing redefined how front offices evaluate the modern franchise quarterback. The debate over whether a rookie could handle immediate offensive control was effectively closed. He proved that when a franchise aligns its structural architecture with an elite mental processor, the transition from college phenom to Sunday dictator doesn't take years, it takes snaps. For draft analysts and talent evaluators, his execution fundamentally altered the prototype for future draft classes. The league's old guard evaluators, long obsessed with hyper-athletic scramblers or raw arm cannon prospects, were forced to admit that clinical precision, field manipulation, and unyielding pocket presence remain the ultimate cheat codes in professional football. Analysts who had once lazily branded him a legacy product were forced to acknowledge the cold, hard reality. Shedeur had used his family's iconic platform not as a crutch, but as a launchpad, quietly engineering the most polished mental game in recent memory. Ultimately, the midnight meeting in Indianapolis wasn't just a job interview or a clever draft maneuver. It was the launching pad for a modern football takeover. Shedeur Sanders walked into that suite under the heavy shadow of skepticism and walked out as the architect of his own destiny. By replacing hype with cold metrics, mechanical flaws with surgical execution, and passive rookie expectations with uncompromising leverage, he forced the entire NFL to submit to his terms. The gamble succeeded completely, closing the book on the legacy narrative once and for all, and officially ushering in a new era of pocket mastery.